I have taken my St. Louis Blues jersey, which I have loved and worn forever, thrown it on the ground because I'm mad at the St. Louis Blues because they have really brought the chaos. And if this involved anybody else, I would salute them and say, what incredible behavior. Chaos in August, not the type of stuff that you would expect to get. They go out. Here's a little timeline. Here's a cheat sheet for you. On Monday, we find out via Bob Stauffer, who else, that the Oilers are going to put Evander Kane on LTIR. He might need surgery. And oh, there you go. Wouldn't you know it? Now they've got all the cap space they need to figure out their situation, to sign, most importantly, their two young RFAs, Philip Broberg, the defenseman, and Dylan Holloway, the wing, both of whom first-round picks, very promising players. Awesome. They now have about $4 million in cap space thereabouts. They can give them each $1.5 million, maybe even $2 million if they want to get crazy. Enter Doug Armstrong and the St. Louis Blues on Tuesday. And I can't even remember. Did you send it to me? How did we find out about this?
I sent it to the group chat.
You sent it to the fucking group chat. The Blues signed Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, both players, to offer sheets. And let me tell you, something from my beat writing days, I know offer sheets and the rules and the tricks well. Famously, better than some GMs do. Doug Armstrong and the Blues knew what the fuck they were doing.
Oh, yeah.
They signed them to contracts with AAVs under 5 years, so they can't fuck themselves on the compensation. And if each contract were for $1 more, they would have had to bump up into the next classification of compensation. So $4.58 million cap hit for 2 years to Philip Broberg, $2.29 million cap hit over 2 years for Dylan Holloway. You'd get a third-round pick if you chose not to match on Holloway, a second-round pick if you chose not to match on Broberg. Fucking awful behavior. It's cool behavior in some ways,
cool.
but
it's
cool. Fucking awful behavior because the St. Louis Blues don't care that the Broberg contract especially is an awful contract that will fuck themselves in their own ways, but they don't fucking care because they're like, you know what? We have a unique situation to just target the team that is favored in our conference and fuck shit up. I respect that, but I don't like that it was done to my guys.
So it's not necessarily an awful contract.
Yeah, so
it is a real risk.
Is someone who doesn't know offer sheets.
I mean,
you know them.
I know the process, but the way that you explained it earlier off the show was it had a lot to it. From like an agent perspective and like a future implications
business perspective.
Exactly. From a pure hockey and value standpoint, the Broberg deal may not be a bad contract. It is surprising that he would be offered that. And I don't think you have a lot of evidence to suggest that he's worth that right now in terms of pure number. But like they are going as high as they possibly can comfortably with Broberg because they know it's going to make the Oilers uncomfortable. Like what the Blues are doing right now is just trying to maximize the uncomfortability for the Oilers, basically.
Yeah, they're not doing this for the Blues. This is not about the Blues. This, like everything else in the NHL, to some people's chagrin, is about the Oilers. This is them trying to fuck with the Oilers as much as they possibly can. We could talk about more of that in a second. What I had said to you, Pete, about why this could fuck the Blues is some will view this as the Blues are paying a little more than $9 million to steal a great prospect for a second-round pick.
For a second-round pick for a guy who was taken 8th overall.
Pretty good deal. If it just costs money and a second-round pick, why not do that? It doesn't just cost money. An agent, a very prominent agent, who would have no reason to deceive me on this, explained to me years ago, hey, like the whole thing of like no one offer sheets anybody because they just don't want to upset their buddies in other teams' front offices. Maybe that's part of it. But a lot of the time, it's just bad business because you're not just spending money in a pick to get the player. Here's what happens. The Blues, in the first round this year, drafted somebody, Jiricek, I think is their last name, and they're a defenseman. Philip Broberg in the NHL in the regular season, has accomplished very little over the course of his entry-level contract. What happens to the Blues when Jiricek, if he goes out and does something over the course of his entry-level contract, has his deal expire, and he comes to the negotiating table and says, 3 years ago, you gave somebody with 13 points in 81 NHL games over the course of their entry-level deal this pretty big percentage of the cap. You got to give that to me now. It messes up teams' own cap structure. It messes up teams' future negotiations. And another thing, what happens if Philip Broberg goes out and is an awesome player? Then you don't just get, like, if he's an awesome player over the next couple of years on a contract that pays him $1.8 million a year, you say, okay, next year, next deal, we're probably looking at $6 million plus.
Double it.
Or if we're trying to get an 8-year deal out of this, maybe 9, something like that. It throws things out of whack. So oftentimes it is just bad business, which is why teams don't do offer sheets. The Holloway thing, I think, isn't of much consequence. I think that's an easier match, obviously, but the ceiling with Broberg is so much higher now.
And
yeah,
I mean, you mentioned that Broberg was buried in the AHL for a long time and came out at the end of last season. But like from what we saw during the playoffs from Broberg, really good.
Oh, you know, he's a player.
Probably should have been with the Oilers for much more of last season than he spent.
So you mentioned that it makes the Oilers very uncomfortable. No matter what, this is going to hurt the Oilers because if they match, then they are really going to not be able to do anything else to their roster. Obviously, they're going to have to trade people like Cody Ceci, but they're going to not be able to do anything at the trade deadline. And even if you are a loaded team going into the season, if you're a cup contender, you don't know what's going to happen. I said this on an Instagram live yesterday. Follow What Chaos on Instagram. What if Stu Skinner has a really bad season? I don't expect that to happen, and I'm the biggest Stu guy in the world, but what if there's a goaltending situation? Or what if Stu Skinner he's kind of in and out health-wise? Like, you just don't know what things are going to present themselves and what obstacles are going to present themselves. So that would make the Oilers really uncomfortable. Also, furthermore, they wouldn't be able to trade these guys. Yeah. You can't trade them for a year. So even if there was a big move for them to make, they wouldn't be able to move 2 of their best bargaining chips. So this just is the perfect crime. So I at least salute the Oilers in that respect because it's the perfect crime.
Happened. So glad it happened. And like you can be mad that this happened to the Oilers, but the Oilers kind of did it to themselves too. Mm-hmm. They waited this long. They allowed it to happen. They allowed it to get to this point. And I've seen some people be a little pissy about how it reflects Holloway and Broberg. Shut the fuck up. If you're going to get those offers, absolutely take them. Absolutely take them. And I saw people being like, well, how do you think the rest of the team's going to respond to the fact that they signed those offer sheets? The guys in the room know that it's a business. They know that you got to go out and get your money, maximize your deals where you can. Like, Broberg and Holloway aren't intentionally trying to fuck with the Oilers. They were presented with good offers, and I'm sure that if they had a choice, both of them might say, maybe not Broberg.
Yeah, I mean, they've both been dicked around by the team, so I could see them both being like no.
Suck it, yeah. But knowing where the teams are right now, I'm sure they probably want to play for the Oilers next year over the Blues, maybe competitive-wise. But like that, the Oilers have a chance to match those contracts if they want to. So like those guys can stick it to the Oilers while also staying with the Oilers. I think the comments of like the team is going to reject them now is so overblown.
There is so much misunderstanding with this, just because offer sheets don't happen a lot. I guess that explains why people are often misunderstood when it comes to this thing, because I also saw a lot of like, hey, remember, they don't have to sign those offer sheets. Well, but they did. So like that's that part has already happened. Yeah, I already I'm bummed about that part, and I tweeted about it, that like Broberg ends up being in a cup or bust year. He ends up being yet another overpaid player on that team, or overpaid defenseman, I should say, and he's going to get shit that he probably doesn't deserve. I think he's going to be such a good player. I don't think the Blues really give a fuck. I think they're just kind of dicking around. But if he returns to the Oilers, I hope that nobody holds it against him. Like, okay, we like Adam Henrique and we don't like Philip Broberg. Play that game if you want. I think that's a little foolish. I think this guy's going to be a stud, but now it's been set up that there's just going to be discomfort there between the player and the team, because what happens if they match on him and he does what I was talking about in the Blues scenario, where it's like, okay, well then he's going to have to be paid an absolute ton on the deal after that. This fucks everything up, and this is why teams don't fucking offer sheet players. Bad job.
This is why also you don't celebrate before you find the goal line, because the Oilers kind of threw a perfect game in the first half of the offseason, and then they hired Stan Bowman, and then this happened to them.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I did wonder.
Really not great vibes to finish out the offseason for the Oilers.
I wondered if they were like, to my knowledge, a lot of GMs like Stan Bowman, and he has a really good working relationship with a lot of people in the NHL. But I'm like, this happens right after they get a new GM. Is someone with an axe to grind against him? Like, let's fuck with him.
Well, the Blues are big rivals of the Chicago Blackhawks.
Blues are big rivals of the Chicago Blackhawks. Peter Chiarelli is big rivals of the Edmonton Oilers.
Connecting the dots here.
So there's a lot that could be going on there. What we can all agree on is the Blues had never heard of Philip Broberg before this week. They don't know what the fuck. They know offer sheets well, but they don't know what the fuck they're talking about when it comes to these players. It's only about fucking with people.
The Blues are looking for an identity right now, though. Like they're in a real we don't know who we are kind of stage as a team. I like the Blues just being shit stirrers.
I will take that, but for a month, I'm shit talking them mercilessly. Okay, so
Fair.
no matter what happens,
Jordan Binnington's on that team. I'm always down to shit talk them.
Throwing the jersey on the ground. If I bump into Torrey Krug around Boston, I'm gonna miss him and be like, you know what you fucking did. Even though I don't think Torrey Krug is in. I don't think that Torrey Krug's fingerprints are anywhere near this thing, but
they could be.
Anybody I see from the Blues, if I hear some Blues music, turning that shit off. Very mad at the team.
Hey, thanks for watching the channel.
We appreciate everybody who checks out our stuff, but 80% of our viewers are not actually subscribed to this page, so if you could smash that subscribe button, it would go a very long way for us.
The more subscriptions we have, the more visibility we get from YouTube, which allows us to do more.
So press that button. Thank you. You mentioned the Oilers dicking around, playing with their food a bit. Bob Stauffer, who knows everything about the Oilers and also just has the best memory in the world, so anything that he recalls ever happened. He's just, his brain is nuts. I was listening to him on Oilers Now on Tuesday, and he said that during the season, when both players were buried in the minors, both players being Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg, Ken Holland was instructed to get both contracts done. Sign both players. They're both in very vulnerable spots. They've got their entry-level deals expiring. What better time, if you think they're going to be good players, than to say, hey, here's 2 years, $1 million per, and let's keep going with this. We like you. Or maybe even give them like 1.2 or something like that. I don't know what happened. I don't know what Ken Holland was doing. I don't know if he was asleep at the wheel, but that famously did not happen. And then this offseason comes, and I won't get on Jeff Jackson and Stan Bowman yet, because Jeff Jackson at least was pretty fucking busy. He was doing a bunch of shit.
Doing some cool shit.
Maybe he went to the cottage a little early or something, but this all could have been avoided, and I choose to blame Ken Holland and the St. Louis Blues.
I don't blame the Blues at all. I think Ken Holland probably could have been a little bit more proactive. Maybe file his retirement papers a little later than he did.
I think he filed them. At first, I was like, yo, this guy handled the goaltending situation masterfully.
By not doing anything.
The more time that's gone on, I'm like, I think he just didn't
want to do
I
stuff.
think he didn't know about the goaltending situation. He just didn't do anything.
He just didn't want to do anything.
And then you could say, okay, well, then how do you explain the Adam Henrique thing? But like maybe they weren't calling up Philip Broberg because he just like wasn't doing it. He wasn't there.
Didn't want to do the paperwork.
It was a whole thing. Gonna have to send it to somebody.
Gotta send too many emails.
I'm going to do the thing that's very cool, where somebody leaves your team and you decide everything bad that happened was that person's fault. So bad job, Ken Holland.
Smear campaign, nice.
You're my second least favorite executive in the NHL.
Who's first?
I was going to name somebody random just to be a dick, but Doug Armstrong.
All right.
Although it does remind. Do you guys want more offer sheets? Like this was this is fun and chaotic.
Yes. Yeah. Like especially in August, you're gonna turn down a big juicy storyline full of drama. I know it involves your favorite team, but this is where you got to prioritize the show and the content over the benefit of your team.
I did that this season. I prioritized what is the best content for this show, and I just focused. I have no choice. The best content for the show this year was Edmonton Oilers. And now, even as we're trying to get away, we're not trying to get away from the Oilers, but even when we're like, nothing's going on, let's talk about movies. A team wants to fuck with another team. And of course, the Oilers is the targeted team.
Yeah, but it's like not as annoying as when the Canes went after Kotkaniemi after the Sebastian Aho thing. Like that was so petty that it was like, it was funny, but also like, come on, grow up a little bit. This one is at least like, well, maybe the Blues just fucking hate the Oilers for some reason that is hard to comprehend.
My favorite offer sheet thing ever was actually one of my favorite offer sheet things. I'll say
Shea Weber.
What's that?
Shea Weber.
No, that was just
with
like
Shea
Flyers
Weber.
are just stupid. Like that was just like stupid people being stupid. My favorite one was Ryan O'Reilly.
Why?
Was it the Flames signed Ryan O'Reilly to an offer sheet coming out of the lockout, and they didn't know, they mishandled something with roster construction, and they signed the Avalanche matched, but the Flames, I believe, didn't know that once the league returned from the lockout, certain players were going to have to go through waivers. So like the only way to add him to their roster would have been to put him on waivers. So the Flames, I believe, and this is Googleable, Sean, if you want to just look up Flames.
Yeah,
Ryan,
I have it.
Do you have it? Give it to us.
Yeah, I mean basically what you said, they signed him, but they didn't realize they would have had to put him through waivers. So if they had signed him, he would have gone through waivers, likely gone to another team, and they would have lost the first and third round draft pick that they would have had to give in the Avs in compensation for O'Reilly. So they would have literally just given the Avs a first and third for nothing.
I don't remember that at all. That's awesome.
I got more stories like this, some off the record, of like this whole offer sheet thing not being like, maybe GMs don't do it because they really don't know how it fucking works.
I also I love the offer sheet like the Aho one, where it's like the other team just negotiates a good deal for you. Where like the Hurricanes tried to sign Aho and the Canadians tried to sign Aho and they just like gave him like an underwhelming contract. And so the Canes were like, oh yeah, we'll match that one for sure. And then they got Aho on a pretty good deal.
Yeah, so my favorite one, though, was Dustin Penner in 2007. I don't know if you folks remember. The Edmonton Oilers signed Dustin Penner from the Anaheim Ducks to an offer sheet. And do you remember who the GM of the Ducks was at the time?
No.
It was a guy called Brian Burke.
Okay.
And Brian Burke handled this as unprofessionally as anybody could. And by that, I don't mean like botched it like the way the Flames did. He motherfucked Oilers GM Kevin Lowe as much as he possibly could. He was like, oh yeah, well, like they had to do it because their GM is horrible and doesn't know what he's doing. So like they just need another player. And then when he said that they weren't matching, he said, we're going to take the picks, and based on how Kevin Lowe runs that team, they're going to be very good picks. There's
awesome.
Like a super cut of, I saw it recently.
Brian Burke rules.
There's a super cut of Brian Burke just fucking killing Kevin Lowe, saying what a horrible GM.
Interestingly, I came up on an Oilers Nation article about that, and they're also talking about how then Sabres general manager Darcy Regier also was pissed off at Lowe because they tried to sign Thomas Vanek in that same summer, and the Sabres were like, what the fuck? For what and for why?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so he called him gutless. He said that it was an act of desperation for a general manager who is fighting to keep his job. very rich for somebody who traded 2 very high picks
we didn't need
for
to talk
Phil
about that
Kessel,
part.
trying to keep his job. Everybody's trying to keep their job at
Oh,
some
yeah,
point.
you should be trying to keep your job.
It's on owners to not fire GMs before they realize they're trying to keep their job, because then they make ridiculous moves. But there was apparently there's like more shit that happened from there, where there was
Minority owner of the Sabres, Larry Quinn, stated that if there's ever an opportunity for us to put an offer sheet on an Edmonton player, as long as we're alive, we'll be very comfortable doing that. And so it was just literally just like, we will fuck you up.
I mean, that was the
for rest of
Kotkaniemi
time.
thing.
Yeah.
That's like that was entirely revenge for Aho.
I love that.
Yeah, like
Give
I
me
love
the drama.
the drama that comes out of offer sheets. Never get rid of like the ability to do it, but
do you wish they were harder to do? Because they are very prohibitive.
yeah, do you wish they were easier to do?
No, I'm sorry. Do you wish they were easier to do? Because there's just like a lot of machinations where like a lot of the contracts, whenever offer sheets are made, they're just fucking weird. Like the Broberg thing, $4.58 million. You want to sign a defenseman off his entry-level deal who projects to be a really good player, and you're giving him $4.58 million a year. Do it for 7 years, because if he ends up being good, then that's a steal and you're buying out years of free agency. The problem is you can't do that because they make it hard to actually poach the players. If you go more than 5 years on an offer sheet, then the cap hit that determines the compensation is not years or total money divided by years like a normal cap hit. It's total money divided by 5. So if, say, the Blues did that with like 7 years times 4.58 with Philip Broberg, they would have had to give up, I think, probably like a first and a third round pick or something like that. So there's a lot of like mechanisms, again, that like I think a lot of people don't know, that make it trickier.
I don't want them to make it easier, because I want GMs to like really think about whether or not it's worth it, both from draft picks, from money, from like pissing people off. Pick your spots. And like when the offer sheet happens, like it does now, every few years, you're like, oh, damn, what's this about? And I also think that like from the best part about an offer sheet is when it's done to a team like this particular situation that is in a really tough spot, and you're basically just fucking them over, where like they're going to have to make a really tough decision. And like, even if the Oilers were able to trade Cody Ceci right now, they would take a fucking bath on that deal, because everybody knows that they're trying to get rid of that money. And I mean, not to be mean, but like Cody Ceci wasn't going to fetch you a lot anyway.
Yeah. Although I think it was Elliot Friedman said like if the Oilers want to trade Cody Ceci, no problem.
Sure, but like
teams want him,
but they're not going to be getting anything back now.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised to even he was saying like they'll be able to move. They weren't going to get anything back anyway. I didn't think, but
they may have to pay now to unload Cody Ceci.
That's not what Elliot's saying. I would have that's what I would have assumed. I would have assumed that in the first place to trade Cody Ceci, they would have to give up something. But Friedman wouldn't.
I don't doubt that there are teams that would want Cody Ceci and would be like, hey, if you give him to us basically for free, we'll take him, and like maybe not retain any money. Like there are bad teams that have some flexibility that would just take an NHL caliber player.
Yeah, I mean, retaining money is a non-starter. The Oilers need somebody to take his contract. So
just getting back to the drama real quick, going on in that Oilers Nation article, they mentioned how at one point Burke said that Lowe challenged him to a fight.
Yes.
And it got so bad that he said, quote, it got to the point where Gary Bettman called me and said, I heard you guys are thinking about having a fight. If you do, I'm going to suspend you both indefinitely. That's how crazy it got between me and Kevin.
The idea of a commissioner calling the general manager just be like, hey, heard you guys thinking about scrapping. That can't happen.
That is so Curb Your Enthusiasm, where like Larry gets in a fight with like Rosie O'Donnell or whoever he's getting into physical altercations with these people.
He said the feud got to the point where Kevin challenged me to a fight on a radio interview. So I'm like, that's not really how you challenge a guy to a fight. If you want to challenge a guy to a fight, you pick a place and time and you show up.
Don't tell me how to challenge someone to a fight.
Wait,
for those of us who don't know how to do it.
He goes on to say, so I called Glenn Sather and I say, look, this guy went on the radio and challenged me to a fight. I'm going to be at Lake Placid at the U.S. Junior Camp. I gave him 3 dates. I told him I'd rent a barn. I picked the address and the time I'd fight Kevin Lowe.
So not
That's
only
the original Meet Me in Temecula.
yeah, you pick the time and the place, and it better be in front of kids.
And also, I picked the time and the place.
yeah, that's not how you do it. You pick a time and a place.
Lake
coward.
Placid is also like one of the most beautiful places in America. I just love the idea that he was just like getting on a flight to Lake Placid. He's like, oh, what brings you to Lake Placid? I'm here to kick somebody's ass.
The idea of getting on a plane to fly anywhere to fight somebody,
Unless
as
you're
a
getting
grown
paid
man,
for it,
like
yeah.
unless you're a boxer or a UFC fighter, is so extremely fun.
Just to settle a
Just
beef.
red and bare-assed all the way across the country to go fight another grown man.
I respect it, though. Instead of letting the problem sit there, go deal with it.
Stan Bowman and Doug Armstrong. Where are they fighting? Who picks the time and the place?
Stan Bowman's got to be like, hey, listen, I just got here. This isn't my fault. This isn't my mess.
The social media heat is still a little hot, man.
I think if you're Stan Bowman, you have to lose that fight. Just and maybe in the hopes that you gain some sympathy or something.
Yeah, people will be like,
You gain nothing by winning a fight against anybody right now.
but what does
Yeah,
Stan
fair.
Bowman gain by taking a new job finally, immediately losing 2 players, and getting his ass kicked?
Yeah, that's also true. It does sound like a lose-lose.
Like, short of like real life serious stuff, that is as bad a start as he could have. Like, I never even considered
Getting your
that,
ass
like he
kicked
might get beat up also.
Getting your ass kicked physically within the first couple of weeks at your new job is a tough look.
Although it
It's
depends.
hard to come back from.
It depends, because if you don't go down easy and you keep getting up, it could endear you to the fan base.
You're
It's like,
still
hey,
getting your ass kicked at work.
yeah, but you didn't give up.
Well, the first couple of weeks for Stan Bowman have not been good. Why? Did they boo him at his introductory press conference? Yeah, probably. But also, he lost Broberg and Holloway kind of for nothing, and
look,
he
now
is
he's in a
not
neck
doing
brace.
so great. He got beaten up very badly. The other GMs are beating him up.
We all silly like the mayor.